Great.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to welcome Spencer. I meant to ask you this. I know, and I've heard you say it, Snakard or Snakard?
Snakard.
Snakard. That's what I thought.
Long
I
A,
remembered that.
snakard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Snakard. Amazing. Yeah. And Spencer is someone I know from a community of coaches, and I'm really grateful that you're here to share with us. And let me just give you a little bit about Spencer, and then we're going to dive into our conversation. So Spencer is an executive transformation coach, trainer, and speaker. She helps visionary women leaders break through their inner barriers to their next level of success by transforming from the inside out so they can profitably and sustainably turn their mission into a world changing movement, all while living in alignment with who they truly are, what they're here for, and what matters most to them. Spencer has trained and coached in personal and professional development for nearly 25 years, and her transformative programs cause profound and lasting shifts in participants' lives by getting to the heart of what drives us, what holds us back, and what it takes to be truly fulfilled as spiritual beings having a human experience, which is so incredible. And really, Spencer, what you do is essentially the nature of this whole series, Discover Your Purpose. So I'm thrilled that you're here
Yes.
to share your expertise and your background around it. I love it so much. And what I'd love to actually start with is I always love to get the story of the woman who's here speaking around like how it is that you started to discover and identify both that moment when you were not in your purpose, what happened, like how did that
Mhm.
feel, what was going on, and then that shift and what you did to help yourself find it. So I'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for having me here as part of this event. It's fabulous. So, yeah, it's interesting actually. I feel like I was very fortunate that I feel like I discovered my purpose and my calling at a fairly young age. Really fresh out of college, I was just like, "This is it,"
Mhm.
of feeling like I knew what I wanted. And so my story is actually a little bit backwards because I discovered it and then was not living in it for a while, and then, and then kind of had to rein myself back in and say, "Hey, girl, you're meant for a lot more than this, and it's time to step into it." So for me, I always really, from a young age, like felt like I knew I wanted to. And it sounds a little hokey, but wanted to help people, wanted to make a difference in the world, make the world a better place. And I got a degree in psychology, thinking that was perhaps the track to go. But really felt that psychology is more geared toward kind of solving problems. Human like positive psychology now is getting away from that. It's working more on like developing what works as opposed to fixing what's not working. But it just felt like the approach in general through psychology was very sort of problem based. And I thought, I don't necessarily want to be working with people with psychoses or solving problems per se. I want to help people live their best lives and do what they're here for and enjoy every step of it along the way. I dated someone the end of high school, moving into college, who I remember him going off to college to get an accounting degree because his dad said that would help him provide well for a family. And he had zero interest in it. He had like zero passion about it, was completely almost like he was marching off to prison to do it. And I was just like, why? Why would anyone do that? So I always kind of knew that purpose really. I do believe we're all here for a reason, and it's kind of our job to figure out what that reason is and live into it. And so for me, I was very fortunate a year or so after I graduated with my psychology degree. This was like the mid 90s, 96, fall of 96 is when this happened. I had the great fortune of discovering a transformational training seminar that really was the early days of coaching. And it had actually already been around for almost 25 years. It kind of came out of like the human potential movement of the 60s. Um, but I remember watching the trainer that first day work his magic with people and the huge breakthroughs people were having, and really like just massive instant turn on a dime kind of shifts that were going on. And I just was like, this is it. This is what I was put on this earth for, to do this work. So really that for me was my moment. And I did go through a number of years sort of trying to find my path to that company. I worked for them for a year or two, and sadly, I caught them at the end of their nearly 30-year run in business. And so they went out of business about a year or two after I found them and was working with them. And I went into corporate at the time, thinking maybe I'd get into things like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, things like that, that were big in the corporate world at that time. And it kind of didn't happen. And eventually for various reasons, ended up just like taking a different path. I ended up starting a yoga studio for a while, thinking, okay, I'll sneak in the life lessons through down dogs and things like that. People think they're coming to stretch and tone and get exercise or relax, and I'm like bringing in the other stuff. And then eventually I discovered the world of online coaching, and which, I didn't at the time, I didn't know that we could reach people in this way. And it seems like such a new world to not need a brick and mortar location for a business, or to have a big, huge company that's, reaching people on such huge levels. And to be able to do what I want to do the way that I want to do it has just been completely life altering and so fulfilling.
Well, I love what you're sharing because I actually think what you're saying is quite common where people might know way earlier than they give themselves credit for. And
Yeah.
then there's a little bit of security. It's like, oh, no, 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 no. That's too hard. That's too, no way I can do that. I don't know how to do that, that kind of thing. And,
Yeah, or it's not
and
gonna work with the life I want. Like I could have gone to work for another coaching company, but it would have been extremely long hours for extremely low pay, which was what I was already doing. And I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to
Mhm,
be traveling all the time and making pennies for it and giving my
mhm.
whole life to this work that I want to do. I want to do the work I want to do in a way that works for the life I want as well.
So for you, is like alignment both of what you wanted to do, but then actually the execution of it as well was
Yes.
the key. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
I love
Yes.
that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. So can you share a little bit then for people who are on that journey? Because you've been doing it now, your own business for quite some time.
Yes.
What you see, sort of like the main struggle for people? Is it identification of purpose? Is it more the bravery to follow something like you knew, like when you were 22? What do you see the most with the women you work with?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of my clients, I think, are clear, at least to some extent, what their purpose is, the difference they want to make, what they want to be doing. Maybe this is just because of my own journey and my own sort of stance on it, but I feel that many women who come to me, it's like they're looking for a way to have it work. Like, I know this is what I want to do. I'm on the path to be doing it, and many of them are already very successful. Their business is doing well, but something somewhere isn't working. And so a lot of what I work with women on really is the alignment of, and you kind of said it in the bio in the beginning, but a big part of what I do is getting really clear and aligned with who you are, like who you really are, not your identity or who you think you need to be, but who you really are, what you're here for, like your purpose or your calling, and what matters most to you, your values and your desires, and what you really want for the life you want to be living in the world you want to be creating at the same time. So really bringing that all together. And as far as what gets in the way of that, quite honestly, like down to the bottom line, ourselves. We generally are our biggest barrier to our success or to our next level of success. And a lot of times it's that I think our identities really play into it in thinking that it can't be a certain way or that it's too hard for it to be a certain way. Like one client I have now, her whole life has been about her like fighting to succeed, and she's been insanely successful and has had numerous seven-figure businesses. She graduated early as valedictorian of her class, like set out on her own, has done all these amazing things in her life. But one of the things when she came to me was saying, I what I really want more than anything is to not have to have another box checked to know that I'm worthy and I'm valuable, like just as I am for who I am in my own skin. Yes, I want to keep accomplishing things. Yes, I want to keep checking off those goals I have, but want to know that who I am as I am is perfectly okay and enough, and I don't have to do that to get to the next level. So for her, so much of her success was built around having to struggle to get there. So one of our biggest things is, okay, let's, what if, crazy idea here, what if you could reach those levels of success you want without having to sacrifice who you are and what matters to you to do it?
Right. Oh my gosh, that's such a huge thing, I think, for any woman, right? It's like I have to always strive and push and do that sort of really masculine thing
Yes.
of like claw your way up the ladder and
Yes.
prove yourself to everybody. And then you have massive success. And I know people like that too. Like they actually have huge success, but that internal space is really still struggling, right? Feeling
Yes.
unfulfilled, unworthy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just like so not enough in so many ways. She actually said to me early on, she's like, I'm not maternal. And she had 3 kids that she's an amazing mother to, but her feeling or her judgment of herself is like, I'm not
Mhm.
maternal. I'm not a good mom. I really want to be spending more time with them and being present with them and enjoying them. And she's had huge growth and huge breakthroughs in that area while having huge growth and breakthroughs in business and profitability and so forth as well. Cause I
Mhm.
really believe it's all connected. I think we can't really separate like, well, I'm going to work on the business and then I'm going to work on my purpose or I'm going to work on my fulfillment. Like it all comes from the same place.
Mhm. And what would you say then to women who are struggling with that worthiness place around it? Because really, to me, when people are feeling unworthy, it's going to block their capacity for any part of it. Identifying purpose, being in purpose,
Yeah.
staying on track, right? So, what do you do with women? How do you work with women in that context?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is my framework as I work through the various aspects with people is really built around as you said in the intro. This I love that quote of we're not uh, blah, I'm totally losing it for a second, but the thing about we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Right. Yeah.
So that's really the basis for my framework that this first part around alignment is getting clear on who you really are on a soul level, who you are, what you're here for, what matters most. So really tapping into that spiritual side of yourself and what really matters and the life you want to ideally ultimately be living for that full soul and self-expression. And then we also then move into recognizing, okay, now what are the aspects of our humanity that are really creating conflict with your ability to live in that expression? And a lot of that gets down to things like our identity, which is rooted in fear and feeling like we're not enough, feeling like we're separate in some way, we don't belong, we're on the outside looking in, and just this whole sense of lack that kind of plays into it. And, honestly, I think we all as human beings have that. I do think it's interesting too. You mentioned the part about we as women playing sort of the masculine game of things. That's a big part of what I work with people on too, is really tapping into what works for you, tapping into your own intuition to find your path through that and to not feel like you need to play this game to put on the mask or the costume of, okay, now I'm going to be the big professional,
Mhm.
the big professional successful CEO here, like doing it your way instead of trying to fulfill someone else's way. And then really integrating those two, so you're bringing your full self-expression into your whole human experience. And so a lot of that is recognizing, again, what are those aspects of our humanity, like the fears, the doubts, the feelings of not being enough, the identity that plays in that says, this is who I need to be, or this is how I need to get there. And our identities really, in many ways, have led to our success. We perceived some lack or some disconnection in some way and thought, okay, when I behave like this, people like me, or I get praise, or I get recognition, or whatever it is. And for many of us, it has led to our success. But in and of itself, it can be limiting. Because if you're not that, then who are you? And just as an example, this one client I mentioned, it's like, yeah, if she's not struggling and working hard to get through some drama, and you wouldn't necessarily think of her as a high drama person, but as we get into things, it's almost like we're, creating obstacles to make things hard so we can overcome the hard things. And so it gets very limiting, and it's like, well, what if it didn't have to be hard? And
Mhm.
that can be very rattling. That's just one example. That's not to say everyone's thing is that it has to be hard, but when some aspect of that identity that's worked for us suddenly gets challenged, or we think, well, how am I going to get where I need to be if I'm not doing that? And so really
Mhm.
finding new ways to reinvent yourself into being, it's funny. It's almost like it's not even like being a whole new version of you. It's like being who you really already are, but just taking off those layers of armor and masks and identity that we've piled on because we think it's who we need to be.
For sure. And I find too, and I don't know what in terms of the women you see, but I see this a lot with women. They'll spend like 10 years in their career or so, often with a degree or whatever it is. And then they are just so wrapped up in this, but something happens, like they have a kid or life happens, and then they're
Yeah.
just like, who am I? And it's like, you're
Yes.
actually so many things, but they
Yes.
have gotten super buried in that one identity, right? And then
Yes.
they
Yes.
struggle with the shift if they want to shift it at that point, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like such a believer in life is short and you know, I really, this is going to get a little woo woo here, but I really kind of believe like we choose our life. I believe even
Mhm.
before we're born on a spiritual level, we
Mhm.
choose the family we're born into and the place that we're born into and the circumstances we're born into for our spiritual growth and
Mhm.
advancement and to experience, you know, just different things. And you know, I kind of laugh I mean, this is just a belief. This isn't the truth with a capital T, but I laugh sometimes when I feel like people are kind of avoiding those growth moments. It's like, honey, you can get it this time or you can get it next time. Like your choice.
Right. And then it's like, what do you say to people like that? And it's, I say this too, because it's like right now in the context of when we're recording this,
Yeah.
we're reopening. There's a lot of stress. And actually what I'm finding
Yeah.
for a lot of my clients and women right now is that they're really struggling to do the things they know to do, which is
Yeah.
like basic, like taking care of yourself. Like it's just a
Yes.
time right now where I feel like people like so much is overwhelming and happening and they can't commit to anything, including to taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is my question? I know where it is.
You lost it, huh?
Yeah, like, well, and it's just really back into that place of how do we constantly maintain what we're doing and who we are. Oh, like
Yeah.
their spiritual path, right? Like you're saying, like we're
Yes.
here, and then things happen like COVID and pandemics and stuff. And then
Yeah.
how do you like what is it for women then? Like what do you do to how to maintain yourself and stay on the
Yeah.
pathway you know to be on? Because I think that's a big struggle for people right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I really, you know, part of what I work with people on is really creating your, maybe I shouldn't say create, it is creating to some extent, but like discovering or tapping into what your true north, so to speak,
Mm.
is, you know,
Mhm.
finding for you what, and that again goes back to that alignment of who you are, what you're here for, and what matters most to you, getting clear on those things and really I always, you know, I always like to play with people on like, okay, if there were no limitations, no obstacles,
Mhm.
no circumstances, no tactics to worry about, how would you want to be living your life? What is the ideal
Mhm.
life you want to be living? The mark you want to be making, the impact, the revenue you want to be bringing in, the experiences you want to be experiencing outside of your professional realm as well, and
Mhm.
really, you know, have people connect into that, and that then becomes like the guide for everything and really connecting like who are you being in that place, who
Mhm.
how is
Mhm.
life occurring for you, what's the experience of life, are you waking up with joy and with you know, is there laughter in your life or is there fun in your life, you know, bringing all these things in and that becomes the guide always, no matter what's happening on whether it's a global pandemic or whether it's some higher stress time at work, maybe you're doing a launch or have some new, maybe you're writing a book or something. It's funny, I just was working with someone who had written a book and she's like, let me just say, don't write a book unless you're like really ready to commit to it, because it's been the hardest, most taxing thing, like energy draining thing I've ever done in my life. And so, you know, whatever it is that comes up that challenges those things, when you're clear on what that true north, so to speak, is for you,
Mm.
to be always tapping back into this. Is this aligned? Is this aligned with who I want to be, with what I want to be doing, with the mark I want to be making? And
Mhm.
you know, sometimes I think we make things harder than they are. It's like we think, well, it can't be that simple. I have this to do and I've got this to pay and I've got these people to take care of or manage and all of that. And no, it's not that hard, because ultimately, no matter what we're doing, we are human beings. And no matter what we're doing and what's happening and what results we're having, we always have control, for lack of a better word, although I really feel like we don't have control over anything, but we have influence over who we're being in any moment.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you can, you know, you can look at people like that don't even have two pennies to rub together, that are living with full joy and passion and connection and love and excitement and all this just amazingness in life. And then, you know, many of us think like, oh, well, when I get to this level, then I'll have joy, then I'll be fulfilled, then I'll, and like any moment right now and right now and right now, you can be creating it. So when you're clear on what that is that you want, you can start creating it right now, regardless of the results. And that then leads to your ability to more easily and more powerfully create those results.
Mhm. Totally. I mean, I'm with you. I'm like nodding. I'm like, yes, absolutely. Because it is so true. It's like, I think, especially our culture and just the culture that we live in, it really trains us to like, once you have the car, once you have the house, or once you have the kid, or once you have the dog, then you'll be happy.
Yeah.
Right.
And
We're
if you're
really
miserable
trained.
and suffering every step of the way, what the hell's the point?
Right. Right. And like you can have loads of money and be miserable, and you can have no money and be miserable. And we're
Yeah.
constantly being sold this line that that's how
Yeah.
we're going to get there. Right. And then there's this whole
Yeah.
journey. And I just fully believe, right, the future is this feminine energy of like
Yeah.
that contentment and peace and receiving space.
Hmm.
And our job as women is to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, which is
To
easier said
do
than
it,
done.
to be it, to live it now, to model it for the future. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's I
Totally.
really feel like, to me, in the series, and even all the women who I've been talking to, it's so interesting and fascinating to constantly be in that practice of tapping back into it,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
is I think the challenge right now. It's like, oh, right, we have to model that over and over again so that
Yeah.
everyone else can do that. And everyone who's in this series, I know that that's part of their what they want, or they wouldn't be here. Right. Like that's
Right.
a big part of it.
Yeah.
So I love,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love what you're sharing about that, because I think it is so easy to get really wrapped up in like all the things we think we're supposed to do, and then being so busy all the time, and then not really seeing. I wanted to say this when you were talking. I was like, it's like newsflash. It's actually simple,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We
Yeah.
make it complicated, but
Yeah.
it's not complicated.
Yeah, it's really not. And awareness is so much of it. I'm a big believer in, it's funny, for a long time, I called myself a mindset coach because a lot of what I do
Mm,
really has to do with shifting your perspective and your mindset.
mhm,
And, I said for a long time, like, it's about living your mindset, like really having that
mm,
awareness moment to moment. Not because some people be like, oh yeah, I practice mindset for 20 minutes a day or whatever. And there's value to having habits or things that you practice, like
mhm,
being grateful and visualization and things like that. Those are great things to do. But if it's only like a little tiny segment of your day and then you're just doing whatever crap you're doing the rest of the time, unaware of what's going on, it's not really effective. Like bringing the awareness into those day-to-day moments. And it's funny, I'm feeling like compelled to share a short story here that has nothing
totally.
to do with business, but totally connects. And I think many of us in successful in business tend to have like wobbles in our relationships. So I guess it ties. But I was thinking of like my husband and I had a argument quite a few months ago now. Fortunately, we don't have them very often, so I can say it was quite a few months ago now. But it was one of those things where, like, in the midst of the argument, I had this like glorious light ascending from the heavens kind of thing to bring that awareness to be like, okay, this, like, I am not being the way, like the partner I want to be right now in this. And
Mhm,
even what I'm saying and where I'm going, like, this is not what I want for us.
mhm,
And, because I was getting so locked into like trying to prove a point or be right about something. And I was like, wait a minute, Spencer, like, you are totally going down a sand pit here, a quicksand pit here. Like, all right, let's shift gears. And literally in that moment shifted. And the whole conversation changed from,
mhm,
from a two of us butting heads argument to a two of us connecting as vulnerable human beings and working through it. And it's, that's something that any of us can bring into any moment in any situation, be it business, be it relationships, be it our own health and well-being, our relationship with money, anything, to recognize in that moment, is this in alignment with who I want to be, with what I want to be creating, with the results I want to have? And if it's not, be the way you need to be for that and do what you need to do for it. And I think we tend to think, many of us sort of in our culture tend to think like, well, that's just the way it is.
mhm.
And it's not. It's never the way it is. The way it is the way we make it be.
Right. And I love too what you're speaking to. It's really about, like you said, how you're being. And it can be very easy to be like, oh, it's all about career. It's really about who you are. And this is something I'm always teaching my clients too. It's like family, who you are with your family.
Yeah.
That's the real test.
Yes.
That is, that is like the maximum test.
Yeah.
Parents, siblings, nieces,
Yeah.
cousins, spouses,
Yeah.
kids. Like
Yeah.
that's where, like, who are you being? So
Hmm.
I love that example. That's the power, right? To own your
Yes.
power and to be true to you,
Yeah.
to know, to be like, oh, I'm just trying to fight a battle that's not really worth fighting, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's so awesome, Spencer. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing so generously your experience and your time, and obviously like great wisdom you're working with your clients on. And I know you have a freebie for us as well. So can you share a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, thanks so much. So yeah, so I have a free masterclass that's available. It's just about an hour long, and it works through a lot of what I've been speaking to here of recognizing the whole first part actually is a little bit of a self-assessment tool to recognize how aligned you are as far as who you're being, like who you're being, what you're, how aligned you are with your purpose and how aligned you are with your values and your desires. So there's a little bit of an assessment built into that, and then also goes in deeper into some of these aspects of the parts of our humanity that get in the way of that. So you can
Mm,
develop some awareness around that to be able to see in those moments, oh, wait a minute, I'm out of alignment here. Something's not going right. And then goes into a little as well onto how to integrate the two, the spiritual and the human sides to really bring that together so that you're bringing your full self into every moment and ultimately, therefore, helping you to fulfill your purpose profitably and powerfully and in ways that work for every part of your life.
incredible.
And
That's so awesome. Yep.
I will just mention too, the URL for that is transformingmillions.com. So people can go there to download that.
Incredible. Incredible. Well, Spencer, I'm so grateful for you. I love that we've connected in this way. And I'm just so
Thank
honored
you.
that you're part of this series. And thank you so much for sharing your insights and this awesome Transforming Millions freebie with everybody. We are grateful for you.
Thank you. And I for you. Thanks for bringing this together to share such amazing people with our audiences.
Thank you, Spencer.